Oh, yeah. Fish on. Yeah. Oh, my God. Good night. Look at that tank. That's a toad, brother. Golly.
Well, we've done it again where we put a space of time in between our last shows. So you got to tell everybody kind of like a little bit of like what went down and why we didn't meet up last week.
Listen, the number one excuse is always going to be the same thing. I went fishing. And it's the only acceptable excuse for you. And so therefore I'm going to make it the only acceptable excuse for me. So I ended up fishing with tonight's guest, and we'll talk about that once we bring him on here. But yeah, fishing, man. We're going to get on a regular schedule. We're going to get this thing dialed in. You guys saw the podcast where I was, announced it going through the Big D, and don't mean Dallas. It happens. It's part of life.
Right.
Christy and I are and will always be good friends. We'll always care for each other and all that good stuff. I don't know what happened. Like, to be honest with you, I'm not the dummy that would have left that. And she's the dummy that was ever with this. So, it's one of those things. Like, I count myself fortunate to have spent 5 years of my life with that beautiful creature and that person who's, will always have made a major mark on KBF, and she'll be here moving forward. So it is what it is. I've seen people go through divorces, and it's devastating, and it destroys their life, and it destroys their career and all that. And that's not me. So I have a hard time crying in my beer or in my sugar-free soda, that is the only thing that I'm drinking these days. So anyway, let's talk about the national championships, the Trail Series championship, the championships. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the Ambassador Series championship with a little bit of updates and the fact that I'm updating the website. And then let's bring on tonight's guest and just have some fun, man.
Sounds
because
good,
that's what the podcast is going to be. It's going to be freaking fun, man. We're going to have some interesting conversations, some dynamic conversations. We're going to bring on some interesting people and some interesting dialogue, have some interesting dialogues, because that's what this is supposed to be about. I'm excited to announce that we are literally starting construction Saturday or Sunday on the new podcast HQ, the media building, where we're going to be able to have like a sports center type desk where we can do the podcast. We can have guests in the studio. We can bring guests. We're going to have the big screens beside us. It's going to look like any other professional studio, but that's also where we're going to live stream all the events from next year. And man, and this guest that we have tonight, Duke Wescamp from Ketch, as you can see right here, is going to be instrumental in helping us pull that off, because they've already done a little bit of laying the groundwork for doing some live streaming, some other stuff through Ketch Outdoors. So let's get into the updates. Okay. National championship. It's going to be stupid this year. Kentucky Lake is on fire. There are people catching donkey bags right now. The weather looks like it's going to trend to perfect fall weather, where nice. Kentucky Lake might be one of the best places in the country to catch those early schoolers, those early, Alabama rig fish, those 4 or 5 fish on the same Alabama rig, throw in a top water and catch one fish, and on the way back another one hits it, and you catch 2 fish on the same lure. Like, in other words, it's setting up to be stupid, okay? But we all know that things are tough this year, man, with inflation and gas prices and people losing their jobs and all that. We're going to extend registration, but to extend registration, we have to have some kind of penalty or some kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? Some kind of incentive to sign up early. Okay. So we're giving away free T-shirts for everybody that signs up until September 30th, and then the price will stay the same until September 30th. Which, by the way, guys, is only 17 days from right now. So Get signed up. Yeah, it sounds crazy. The national championship, Challenge Series Championship, and Trail Series Championship are 17 days. So anyway, get signed up for the event. We haven't been beating the drum as hard as we have in years past because it's a known thing. I don't feel like we need to beat the drum, but apparently people are like, dude, how come I'm not hearing anything? So here we go. But on October 1st, the entry fee goes from $300 up to $400. Ooh. And you can register all the way to the 15th of October. but it's a complicated process for us to have a moving number and then try to accommodate registration processes and have information packages done and all that. So the 15th is as far as we can go. It's going to cost a little more. It is what it is. That's how everything works. So get signed up by September 30th.
How many are signed up? How many are signed up now already?
79, I think.
Okay,
right?
we need to work on that.
Which we're right where we were last year. Everybody's just freaking out, and then all of a sudden there was like a big push. So we need to get people signed up. What folks don't realize is, I hear this thing like, man, this event or that event's got $100,000 guaranteed purse, and that event's got a $50,000. And we've never really gone out of the way to promote that at KBF. We've always promoted the big guarantees for first place. But I did some numbers before we went live, and the average payout for the national championship is the average payout is $316. The smallest payout was $275. So that's a big number. So the purse is generally, pushing $300K. So that's a big number. Okay. And then we are hoping that with the incentive of anybody can enter now, and the fact that it's pretty much an open for the first 2 days leading into making that final cut, that we get some new blood and we get some folks that we can get excited about kayak fishing. So that's that. The championships are going to stay with a September 30th deadline, meaning the Challenge Series Championship and Trail Series Championship. The National Championship, though, we're going to extend the deadline out. I had a lot of people hitting me up. Oh, man, I don't get paid till the 1st. I don't get paid till the 15th, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, there's been a lot of 1st and 15ths since we announced this, but I get it. So we're extending the payout. We've got to do food and things like that, and all that stuff gets more expensive the closer you get to the date. So we're going to compensate for that by just raising the entry fee and not doing a T-shirt, because we can't do T-shirts if we don't get the order in 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out. Right. So free T-shirt up to the 30th. Entry fee stays $300. Then we'll leave registration open from the 1st to the 15th for the national championship, and it'll be $400, and it'll be what it is. Okay. So get signed up for the national championship, Trail Series Championship, and Challenge Series Championship. One update that went out, a lot of people saw the post. I think that Lynette, it was either Lynette or Christy or both, made the post, and there were some people that were left off because they forgot, or I didn't do a good job of articulating that the in addition to the top 25% at each trail stop and in the Challenge Series, that the top 200 in the AOY standings for each of those were also qualified. So that amendment was made. But if you saw the original post and you didn't think you made it, be sure to go back and check those qualification lists, because if you were in the top 200 in points for either one of those series, you also made it in, regardless of whether or not you finished in the top 25%.
Gotcha.
Okay. Other than that, man, let's stop talking about tournament stuff and let's start talking about a dude who revolutionized catch photo release fishing. And I can straight up say that,
That's it. I mean, and not only that, I've got my board here. I've got another one attached to my kayak. You got yours with you.
I grabbed this I had to clean it up because it looked like it was buried in the ground for 6 weeks with all the fish slime on it. But the customization, the quality of the manufacturing, the ability to do logos, things like put your company name on it or put your brand, your personal name on it, and things like that are just, and the manufacturer quality is just through the roof. And so, but before we bring them on, I have to put this disclaimer out there. If you watch this, just realize we are not having somebody go live from like a penitentiary or from like a county jail. It just looks like it. So let's bring Duke on here from Ketch, and let's talk about it, man.
It just looks like it. It doesn't look like it. If he turns a little bit, there's a window in the background.
I'm sorry, the penitentiary doesn't have a lot of 120 AC, so I was looking for a plug there. But
it's pretty sweet that they let you take off the orange jumpsuit, though.
It's the perks when you know the guards.
So Duke, let me set the table for the folks that don't know. Duke Wescamp, a lot of you guys know him as Mike. We actually had this conversation up in Wisconsin this week about, are you Duke or are you Mike? And he's like, well, yes. So I'll just leave it at that.
Figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out. He can be. Duke is like the alter ego, and then Mike is the guy that if you're at the bar and you're a local charter captain and you make a derogatory comment about kayak fishing, he comes out. And so I got we got to meet Mike. No, it's Mike. Duke's the nice
sorry.
guy.
That might not be as suitable for podcast story.
we are going to talk about the suitable portion of it. So we just got back from a cool trip. We'll talk about that. Let's talk about Ketch first, and you guys hang around to the end where we can talk about some Wisconsin fishing and fellowship and basically just a bunch of dudes in a house making the maid that had to clean that thing up after the fact blush. So let me set the table. Duke reached out to me. Actually, no, I'm gonna let you tell the story about our interaction because I'm only gonna tell your part of the story. Yeah. So I'll stop right here and say this. This guy right here in this little box down here is the guy that revolutionized the credibility of the measuring device in kayak fishing. And we'll talk about this a little bit later in the show, and we'll get into the specifics of it because I'll ask him this question. But there was also a pivotal point in kayak fishing a couple years ago where I think if we didn't have a Ketch board, if Ketch didn't exist, we would have had a major problem on our hands as tournament organizers, tournament directors, groups who needed a reliable, dependable, non-flexible measuring device. I'll leave it at that. So let's go back to the beginning, though. Let's talk about how long have you been kayak fishing? What got you into kayak fishing? And why did you decide to build a measuring board?
Man, I guess I didn't get into kayak fishing. I was into canoe fishing, but for the sake of this argument, most kayaks aren't kayaks. So I'll call a canoe a kayak, right? My folks bought a piece of property, I don't know, maybe 25 years back. And it had an old Grumman aluminum 17-foot tandem canoe on it. And it had just never even occurred to me that you could fish off of it. And, one of my cousins said, oh, have you been back to the pond? There's an old rickety canoe over there. Yeah, like we're 2 minutes in and I'm already doing it.
I mean, ass is acceptable. All
right, cool. All right, we just stepped it down. Just F-bombs. All right. So there was this old 17-foot Grumman canoe, and a cousin of mine said, hey, well, there's a bunch of fish back in that pond. Like, you kind of got to weed whack your way back there and get back to it. But, there's an old canoe and, there's big bass in there. And so it just kind of started like that. It was just one aluminum canoe on a body of water that I got to know. And then, it was like maybe a half a summer before it was, I was like, all right, well, now I want something I can throw in the back of my pickup or, throw on a trailer and like go somewhere else and do this, because I kind of fell in love with the small craft end of it. I owned some old towns, like around, like the next craft I bought was an old town, like maybe around 2006 to 2008, somewhere in there. I didn't write it in my planner because I didn't think I'd ever be asked a question about it. But, I have two Hobie 12s that I bought in 2012 new, and that was like really my first serious fishing kayak. And yeah, I mean, I've been hooked ever since. I own a fishing boat, a well-equipped deep V fishing boat. And I still spend way more days a year on the kayak than I do on the boat. For a lot of reasons, but most of it's just related to the experience of on the water, and then maintenance too. If you've ever owned a boat, for the audience members who've only owned kayaks, it's painful.
Yeah, boat's an acronym that stands for bend over and take it, bust out another 1,000. You know what I mean? So
I've paid 1,000 to bend over and take it. So. And I was working as a golf professional, and I'd kind of.
Hey, Randy, do me a favor. I don't think this is going to have its true effect unless you go full screen on Duke and let him state that. Let him state that again. So
yeah, hold on. We got that. That's got to be.
We need this as a soundbite for TikTok for a guy.
All right. I used to be a golf professional.
Yes.
And I, I'd always been I'd started as a machinist, way back when, and I'd had a kind of early midlife crisis, and I became a golf professional and a mortgage underwriter, because being a golf professional doesn't pay bills. It's kind of like being a kayak bass professional if you're everyone other than Chad. And, I got disenfranchised with it. And it just happened that, I built automation my whole life and I'd been a machinist my whole life. And my dad said, "Hey, I'm done with this thing he had sold his business and he was done with the non-compete. And he's like, let's build some automation." So I was like, I just quit my job today. Okay. I fell right back into the groove of manufacturing, and I've always loved it. But I guess when I was younger, I was like more ego driven and kind of said like, oh, well, I can't really create my own thing here because I'm kind of living in my dad's shadow. But then came the idea. I was getting married. My business partner, Eric Peterson, who's the third business partner over at Ketch that no one ever really hears about. He was already married, had 3 kids, and like our fishing time was getting crunched. So we needed a legitimate business purpose for going out fishing. And he said, "Why don't we make a bump board?" And I said, what the hell's a bump board? I didn't even know what it was. And then he told me, and I was like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Yeah, I was wrong.
What made him think that a bump board was a niche? Because was he talking about for kayak fishing, or was he just talking about a bump board in general?
No, we're musky fishermen. And we do a lot of muskie, a lot of walleye. I mean, you saw a little bit of what it's different, I've never, bass fishing is way down the list of the things that I enjoy doing, or that Eric enjoys doing. And honestly, it was the ease of assembly. We just said, well, if we go in and make this and we pin it and we treat it like an automation fixture, the opportunity that we saw was real. The opportunity was that nothing on the market was real. It was all just like a suggestion. I mean, kind of like a Stanley tape. You ever pulled a couple Stanley tapes apart and seen that they're like a 16th inch apart? Mm-hmm. And that was the whole idea. There were we were involved with fishing some big muskie tournaments, big money muskie tournaments. And so, we had kind of tried to sell them on the idea, and there were a lot of anglers that bought into it, but not any of the tournament trails. The muskie tournaments, just so you know how bad it is, they still allow homemade devices. So it's a totally different ball game. And then we started kind of making a little ends or a little leeway in walleye, as we scaled down to a 32-inch board. But I had already been kayak fishing, and a buddy sends me a link of, there's these online kayak, like bass fishing tournaments. And, I start looking at it and I'm like, dude, they're in like 40 states. And I'm like, they're doing this all remote. They need an accurate device. And I sent Chad an email, and, in 10 minutes later, I got a phone call back, and he was the first tournament director. And fortunately so, he was the first tournament director that like totally got what we were doing. And it was a lot different at that point. There was a lot of input that went in from KBF and their judges and Chad and to make that product. A lot of people don't see that, and they just kind of assume, oh, that was what I came up with, or that was just the easiest way to manufacture it. But there's a lot of little interesting features built in to aid judges and maintain accuracy. And, that was when I saw the potential, and that was, really where the business originated.
Yeah. So when you originally reached out, Randy, if you want to bring that picture up of the original bump board, you had sent us one for kind of the initial approval. And, I got it in front of Joe and I think Richard Penny, myself, a couple of other people, and you didn't have the curved extrusion on it. And so one of the first things we said was, man, this is going to be tough. These guys are used to the fish being cradled. And I think it might have been 3 days later, maybe even 2 days later, you were texting me like, yeah, we were already thinking about that. So if you notice how the fence is wider than the board, here's what we're going to do. And I think inside of a week, I had a cradle that slid over the end of the board and was like, holy crap, this dude does not mess around when it comes to, if there's an issue, let's address it and let's fix it. And more importantly, and then here's where I'll toot your horn. On the old boards, the marks didn't go up onto the fence. And Randy, if you can go back regular, I'm going to show guys something that they may not even know yet. So when you look at these numbers that are up here, and then you have the regular numbers up here, down here, and then the same thing is true on the carbonite. It was one of the original complaints when we started putting these boards out, is that to the untrained eye, when a person holds the camera up and they take a picture, these numbers look like they don't align. And when they don't align, that's letting us as judges know that if these numbers don't align, that means that you are holding your hand to the left or to the right, which is creating a parallax. So when those numbers don't align, if those numbers don't align in a photo, you've got an angler that is holding the camera at an angle, either inadvertently or in some cases advertently. So when you get to the situation where you slide the fish away from the fence, and I talked about this in the how to cheat video, and then you move your camera over here, you've got this angle going on to give you a parallax, and you've moved the fish away from the board, but the shadow doesn't show up, you could truly manipulate the concept. So I started saying things to Duke like, hey, you need to have a real fence, man. We need to have a board that we can etch on. And he's like, yeah, it's just not practical with the other one. And then immediately the gears started turning and we started moving towards that even before we had, you know, any real sales with the original, you know, Ketch aluminum and Ketch custom board. And so the thing that attracted me to it initially was I knew about the flex in hog troughs and had been fighting it for years with putting little things into the KBF rules so that we can make it harder, so we can detect it when it happens and to be ready for it if it ever blew up. So when you told me the board was made out of aluminum, I was like, hell yeah. I was like, how are you guaranteeing accuracy? And when you started telling me how you do it and the background, and the first thing I told you was, you're stupid for getting into measuring boards. I'm like, you're not going to make any money in measuring boards by the time you get laser engravers and extrusions. And you're like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, we already have all that. So I was like, okay, cool. So now pick up the story from there and just kind of talk about the natural progression from like that original board to the Ketch X to the carbonite and, you know.
Well, first, let me make a point to all the entrepreneurs out there that we all take a moment where we step off the ledge. And sending Chad Hoover, a gentleman I've never met before and only spent, you know, maybe 20 or 30 minutes talking to on the phone, a $1,200 prototype of a 3D printed cradle. That was the moment I stepped off the ledge. And I'm really glad I did. You know, and kind of development happened from there. You know, it was, you know, I think the initial thing that we really came across was, you know, people were used to a $20 bump board. They were used to drawing their own lines on it. And so there was a whole culture change because, you know, they treated it like a disposable product, really. Like, you know, how many guys do you know that had like 2-3 backups? You know, they had one in their kayak, one in their truck. And, you know, it was we had to go about changing the culture. And I knew that we had to go about, you know, bringing a more budget friendly product. And I didn't even know what that would come, like how that would kind of form. And it just so happened that in 2019, we hired Nick Langton, and he's a huge ice fisherman. And he's like, man, there's a big problem like with bump boards and ice fishing. Like, there's no good bump boards that are accurate, and the ones that are accurate that are aluminum like ours, the fish freeze to them. And so we did the carbonate board really as an extension to get into ice fishing. And I didn't know that the tournament anglers in kayak fishing would be that into it. You know, I mean, there was a suspicion that they might be into it because I knew it would be at a cheaper price point, but also they had now kind of been normalized to a certain extent on our original product, which is, you know, pretty heavy duty and I thought was received extremely well. So that was kind of the next iteration. And unfortunately, the great idea to extrude the profile and build the Ketch X came just shortly after that. So, you know, we've now discontinued the original line, and it's the Ketch X line and the carbonate line. And there's, you know, the Ketch ID and the keeper accessories. And that's kind of, you know, where the business is at present day. Ketch Cart. And we're working on a ton of, you know, fun stuff with, you know, rapid prototyping, which I think you guys are going to have a real fun time seeing what we're doing moving forward with some of these kayak brands. We're really rethinking a lot of the components and doing a lot of things that most of the bigger manufacturers won't mess with because it's low volume. But we're strategizing and kind of gamifying it and making it so that we can do this stuff where other people can't. And I think that's going to be really exciting because there's a lot of people that want like, hey, I want a motor mount, or I want a a tiller handle, or I want like this accessory for this specific model. And like for once, I think there's going to be a manufacturer that can come and respond to that. And I think it's going to be pretty cool.
You know, and one of the things that when we started having these conversations, and this is the part of my job that's the most interesting, and a part that I don't think a lot of people know about me, is that I am kind of behind the scenes doing a lot of liaisoning or consulting with companies to develop products, or if there's a product that I know needs to be made, I'll go to who I think is the best person to make it. But one of the things that's always happened is all these products have been kind of made in secrecy, and then they come out, and then the industry starts, you know, shooting holes in them, criticizing them. All your armchair quarterbacks come out of the woodwork. And I said to Duke, I said, man, let's start making some of these things that are gap fillers that nobody else wants to make. But like, let's take them in the prototype phase and just put them out to the community. And let's open source design these products with the community. And he was like, yeah, I mean, that could be a double-edged sword. And, you know, we talked about it. It wasn't like I had to twist his arm real hard. It was just your standard manufacturer concerns. And we did that. In fact, I've got a cart out in the driveway right now that I've been towing around with my truck, trying to see how many miles it takes to break the wheels. I put it on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and got some good feedback from it. And we're going to do iteration 2 of that here, pretty soon. We'll probably bring Duke back on to do like a live stream. Let's bring the product iteration on. Let's get, one of the engineers there to bring up a SolidWorks image, and, let's actually play with it live, get the community's feedback. And, there was one negative comment that was pretty funny. Some guy posted, give you free engineering? No. I said, cool. Then go start your own company and charge for your engineering, charge for your engineering built into that, or get somebody else to pay you for it. Because I'm giving you an opportunity to be part of this as a community so that a better product makes it to the market. If you're not interested, this post wasn't even for you. So ship it. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's, because we're so established in kayak fishing, and we've been trying to cross over a little bit to boats, but like kayak is our home. And so for me, it's all about, the rising tide. That's so lame, but I'm going to say it. The rising tide raises all ship. But it's, exactly. But here's the thing, the more opportunity there is in our space, the more opportunity there is for the anglers, the more opportunity there is for the manufacturers, for the tournament directors, for the influencers. It all goes down the line. And you know what? Like, I think there's a lot of great boats being built. I think there's a lot of boats. I think all those boats could be a little bit better. And the tough part is these manufacturers are held to the constraints of like, I got a budget to build this. I got to still make money when I'm selling. If I'm going to sell this, this Bonafide SS 127 at like $1,700, I'm not sure what the retail is right now, but like, you got to hit that price point. You can't be spending $1,500 building the damn thing. And so no matter what, like any manufacturer ends up like they cut some corners, not necessarily cut some corners, but they're trying to hit a price point so you're comfortable buying it. And I feel like we can utz the market forward by saying, hey, here's some thoughts we have, and maybe it ends up on the next design of their boat. And it doesn't help me any to sell any products, but you know what it does? It makes kayak fishing more accessible, and it makes it easier for someone to go get something that works for them right off the shelf. And like, that's a win for everybody. Everybody that's like interested in this industry, it's a win.
Well, yeah, you're also looking at other aspects of the industry. You're not just talking about your boards. You're talking about your carts. You're talking about other ways that you're trying to get involved to be a part of the industry. And I mean, now you're doing trophies. You're looking at other aspects, and now looking at other ways to get more of your product out on the kayak. I mean, that's innovation in itself, right there.
Well, the thing that was, it's all about like, we built all these like these manufacturing and these labor assets building Ketch. And so now it's about like, all right, we have this stuff at our disposal. Now, what's the best way to use them? Because, I'll be honest, I'm going to be a major disruptor in this industry for a while, because you let me get my foot in the door, and like, now you're going to smell my stinky stocks, bro. That's what's going to happen.
So let me talk about that for a second, because you touched on something that I hear a lot, especially with my YouTube channel and my social platforms, where people constantly, let's say a new kayak comes out. I can't believe they're charging $900 or $1,000 for that kayak. It's only like $50 worth of plastic. All right. So you're not paying for the plastic, and you're not paying for the handles. You're not paying for what you're paying for is the cost that it takes to manufacture those things. You're paying for the mold. You're paying for the engineering process. And what really it boils down to is, like, for example, on the Bonafide SS127, there's 13 molds to get that boat off the ground in the beginning. The kayak mold, the handle mold, the seat mold, like all these piece part molds.
Humongous.
And what people don't understand is you've got to amateurize the cost of all of those molds across the quantity of boats that you're going to sell. And when you think about something like a handle that may cost $30,000 for the mold or $20,000 for the mold, and you're going to put 2 of them on each kayak, but the kayak itself is $15.99, $16.99, $17.99. You've got to make enough money off of that boat to carry the cost of the kayak mold, the handle mold, the hatch mold, the lock mold, the everything. And so when you say you've already got a lot of that cost absorbed, you're able to make the next iteration of products cheaper because a lot of that cost has been absorbed. But I want to back up real quick to talk about this whole community conversation thing. When you first reached out to me, you said, hey, we want to do a custom board for something special. And I was like, man, the 10 is coming. I would love for you to create a custom board so that when you make it into the 10, you get a board that's branded, And so Duke came back and was like, look, we're going to make you the board. We're going to put the KBF logo on it. We're going to put the KBF logo on the other side. We're going to, work the Ketch logo into the design and things like that. Put the angler's name on the side of it. And, what color do you want? And I was like, man, I want like a dark green, almost black. And he's like, I don't know, man. Everybody that we talk to says the board needs to be light and the lines need to be dark. And this is an example of where people get boxed into a mindset. And
people don't know nothing.
And they think, well, it needs to be this way because that's the way it is, right? And so when Duke said to me, why do you want a dark board? I was like, for one, on a dark board, the marketing pieces show up better. The logos pop better. But more importantly, I think the lines need to be light. And he was like, I don't know, man. Everybody's telling us the lines need to be dark and the board needs to be light. And I'm like, the line needs to be light because a bass's tail is black.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take a black line and when we zoom in, and so this is something that not a lot of, just competitors or average spectators understand. When we zoom in on those photos, we give it to you if it's a line cutter. If it's a black line and a black tail, it's very hard to say it made it or it didn't make it. And you've got to make sure that you can't see space between it. But when you've got a solid line and you've got a black tail, that black tail breaks any piece of silver. It sticks out like a diamond in a billy goat's butt, right? So there was some consumer re-education that had to happen. No, we need light lines.
It's still happening.
And then, of course, with the carbonite comes out with the darker line. Oh yeah, we need a lighter board with the darker lines. Why? Well, it's because the way it's been. Why? Well, it's because that's what we're used to looking at. Do you actually judge? No. You ever zoomed in to try to determine if a line cutter makes it? Well, no, but what? They like those those dark lines to show up in a photo, but they don't think about the fact that when you zoom in, it's easier on a light line to see that black tail, cutting into it. Now you got the choice of both. You've got the Ketch X.
Yeah.
It's got the light lines. You've got the carbonate that's got the regular lines. But dude, I even was like, that dark board is going to be the jam. And everybody complained about it. And it was like, okay, I get it.
Hold on. Let me interrupt you. Okay.
Everyone
complained about it. And, some people were interested. It was new products. So there were some people that were interested, but there was definitely like a lot of hate from the established community who I didn't know at the time, who I was just like some asshole in Illinois, like trying to monetize the market or something,
Yeah.
And it was, oh shit, I lost my train of thought, man.
Well, the big argument was without the light board, you can't see the space through the bass's mouth because of the open mouth and the zero line and all that other stuff,
I remember. All right. The so Chad tells me, he's like, dude, we're going to have an expo this year at the national championship. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm in. And he's like, well, yeah, you're new. He's like, it's only like $250. Like, it's pretty cool. It's down at Kentucky Lake. And, he's like, if you're going to be down there, you better bring 500 or 600 bump boards. And I looked at him and I was like, this dude's full of, and, I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, I don't think we sold 600 bump boards since we started this damn business. But I'm not an idiot. So I had like 700 some odd bump boards packed into me and my dad's truck going down there, and we sold every one of them that wasn't black. So there might have been a sour reception, but it drastically changed by Kentucky Lake, and anyone that was there can kind of tell you, like, what was happening at the expo was happening in front of our booth.
Yeah. Yep. It was a stigma about that black board. Oh, it's going to be too hot. The fish are not going to want to lay down on it. Okay, cool. Fair enough. I like the black because it looked better for the fish's tail showing up. I like the logos because they stuck out better. And I like the fact that, honestly, on a black board, it's easier to see the edge of the bottom of the fish's mouth because it's white, and black actually shows up better. And almost everybody overexposes their photos. So with these bright yellow boards and the highlighter colored boards that the Hog Trough had, you ended up with this halo from the color of the board. And so when you started trying to look at those line cutters, it blurred the edges of the fish's tail. On a black board, it doesn't do that because black doesn't reflect. And so it's just one of those things. It's like one of those things where we tried it. We tried to educate the consumer base, and they were just not having it. But again, we did that process. We did it together. I'm like, the blackboard's going to work. You're like, nobody wanted a blackboard. And we just said, okay, cool. Nobody wants a blackboard. Let's go with olive green or a different color.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And it's just been one of those things where I routinely run into people at a boat ramp. And if they finished in the top 100 of a KBF event, they rock that Ketch board from making it into the top 100 with pride. If they make it into the 10, they have that Ketch board on their mantelpiece or behind them. It's a trophy. It's not actually a measuring device. And so I want to talk about that for just a second, because I truly believe that Ketch became the standard by which our sport is measured, right? If there's a slogan for Ketch, it's the standard, right? It is the measurement standard, which is a natural transition into you reaching out and saying, hey, what do you think about this? And you sent me some pictures of some trophies. And I was like, dude, that, like, I'm big on recognition. It's actually one of the core CORE principles. The R is recognition and resources of the KBF, business philosophy. And we had done really well with Yak Attack, but Yak Attack's not a trophy company. They just used the machinery that they had to make the discs. And those discs, by the way, are just a natural extension of my military background. They're just an oversized challenge coin. But I always wanted a pedestal and something that looked more like a substantial trophy. So when Duke started making those, it was like, dude, this is the new standard by which not only are the fish measured, but the angler's accomplishment is measured. So Duke, I wanted to set the table a little bit, but talk to me about how the whole transition from making bump boards to making trophies. How did that happen?
It was, I just 100%, I just wanted to own a water jet. I needed to start making excuses to own a water jet, and trophies seem like low-hanging fruit to me. And it's not low-hanging fruit for anyone that wants to start a trophy business. It's probably a lot of aggravation. It wasn't until, I brought Dwayne Beatty on full-time, and having a full-time designer that also understands manufacturing, that we could really do it efficiently. So I want to take this moment to apologize to any of the tournament trails that may have thought their trophies weren't going to arrive on time. They all did. So I don't want to hear nothing, but it might have been stressful.
But it doesn't mean you're not stressed at the last minute.
Oh, no, it doesn't. And there's a lot of people like, oh yeah, I'll just get it out. And they're like, look at this guy. Like, is he really going to get it done at the end of the week? And I got a good team.
Let me give you a test. Let me give the folks out there a testimonial on that. And this is going to be this is going to be like a demonstration of a mistake. But let me talk about the commitment that Ketch has. So I get a message from one of the tournament directors. Hey, man, I opened up the trophies, and it's for this lake. And I was like, oh, shoot. So the other trophies were en route, but I didn't have anybody to open it up there. I said, hey, Duke, can you give me a call? So it gives me a call, and I'm like, hey, so I'm assuming that if the trophies for this place ended up in Virginia, that the trophies for Virginia are in this place. And he was like, let me go check the shipping labels. And sure enough, the trophies had been cross-shipped. And I was like, damn, man, I don't know what I'm going to do other than have them turn the trophy around backwards, where it shows DZ or KBF, and then we'll ship them the trophies. We'll cross-ship them after the fact and all that. He's like, no, dude, that's on me. I will rebuild and reship the trophies right now, and I will have them by the tournament. I want to make this make sense to you knuckleheads that are listening. This ain't like it happened a week and a half before the event. This is like Wednesday, and the tournament's on Saturday.
Right.
And Duke literally redid the trophies, and reshipped them to both locations. And I ended up with two sets of dummy trophies that are in the backdrop in my house that will be moving down here. Did I mention the whole going through the Big D thing? Well, anyway, that stuff will be moving down here now, and it'll be part of my man cave.
Does Chrissy get half the trophies?
No. But she gets all of everything else, so it really kind of balances out. So anyway, anything man looking is going to the man cave. And so the whole future of what I do, this trailer, the KBF Media Center, it's all going to be man caves pretty much. So so anyway, the testimony is this knucklehead right up here, like right there, this dude freaking reships 2 sets of trophies. Who does that? You know who does that? Somebody who's dedicated to customer service, knows what, when the crap hits the fan, you do what you got to do to make it right. And so, my hat's off to you again, brother. Every time anything has ever happened, even if I've sweated it, you've never left me hanging. So yeah, talk about the trophies a little bit more, if you don't mind.
I mean, it was just I wanted to buy a water jet. I think it's a really neat piece of prototyping equipment, and laser and plasma can cut aluminum, but not without making the substrate really, really nasty and kind of unworkable, and leaving a lot of deburring and cleanup work and whatnot. And I just I've always loved the simplicity of a water jet, and they're really expensive to operate, and they're like pretty damn expensive to get a big one. I mean, ours will take a piece of material, I think 11 foot by 6 foot. So, I mean, this is a giant piece of machinery, but in my mind, it was one of those necessary pieces, because if we really want to prototype, this is what gives us the ability to prototype. And I don't have to worry about, if I got to weld these pieces back together, am I going to have a massive heat affected area from laser or plasma? And it lets me do irregular shapes. That's the biggest thing is a lot of these components are irregular shapes. They're not easy to fixture. They're not easy to build. And that's what stops the manufacturers from building them for you. When you want that like platform specific product that will solve the problem on your Old Town or your Hobie or your Bonafide or your Native, what stops guys from doing that isn't really the design cost, because we can design that product pretty easily. What happens is that you end up with this huge fixturing cost. And that's what kills most projects, is by the time you make all the fixturing, you have so much tooling amortized into the product that the product gets so expensive that it outpaces the market. So I wanted the water jet because I wanted to be able to make low volume products. And it was like quickly after we got the water jet, I was on vacation. Actually, I'd taken my kids to Disney World, which is probably 5 times more aggravating than working. But I took my kids to Disney World, and like all of a sudden Marco from the shop and Jake from the shop start the water jet arrives, they finally get it built. And like all of a sudden, like I'm seeing like all these different, I won't describe them because it's probably not podcast appropriate, cutouts that were being sent to me. And I was like, oh man, this is really going to open up some doors. And I think it really has. I think it's really like changed the way that we think about the design process and the cost that we think about goes into the design process. And really the way to justify it was, let's make some trophies. Like we can cut out a profile, we can laser engrave it, we can anodize paint, powder coat, whatever you want to do. And like that was just an opportunity based thing, because I, for the longest time, have been sick of the trophies that people hand out in fishing tournaments, because let's be honest, for 99% of the competitors out there, the check doesn't mean near as much as the trophy does. And he wants to have something that he's proud of to hang on his mantle. And like when you got a little plastic bass on this little like generic wood cylinder, like, dude, that's just not cutting it. No one's proud to be like, oh, I won this tournament that gave me this $12 trophy. Or you got
the same plaque with the same bass and the same, like,
exactly,
it's the same one. Yeah.
So the idea was just, and again, if we can sell clubs into like the idea of, hey, if you're going to come back next year, we can kind of sink some of the setup costs, and we can get you in a trophy program where you have a custom trophy product. And you're basically paying the same amount that you're paying for the cheap ass trophies that you're buying at present.
And so one thing I wanted to point out is, a lot of people don't know, is that if you look at this profile of the board right there, this extrusion that makes up the Ketch X is actually the walls of the premium trophies. And then if you look at this part right here, up to about right here for the third place for KBF and down here for second place, the actual measuring board is the trophy, which is also cool because it is a trophy for Ketch Photo Release kayak fishing that's built from the measuring board for Ketch Photo Release kayak fishing. So being able to integrate the device by which you measure the standard into the device by which you recognize the winner of that standard is a cool concept. And honestly, every time I unpacked one of those trophies this year, and I ended up going to, I think, all but 4 trail events this year, every time I unpacked them, I was just blown away by the quality. And then when we handed them to people, just seeing the look on their face of the substantialness of it, and the fact that these things are, we always refer to trophies as hardware. But if you go back to the original national championship trophy that Duke built me, he's like, by the way, I never saw it until you guys saw it at the national championship the first time. He brings this thing in, and they have to dolly it in, and they've got the drop cloth over the top of it. And this is kind of also a big reason that we get along is dude unveils this like unbelievably, ridiculously badass national championship trophy. The names of the winners is actually this part of the trophy of the measuring board integrated into the trophy. And then it's basically just stacked billet aluminum and columns and all this. And it's got the names of all the major championships on it. Then it's got a light system that works off of a remote and a fart machine built into it, which Christy wouldn't let me play the fart machine on stage. But now that I can do whatever the hell I want to do again, we may debut the fart machine feature of the national championship trophy that I've been handcuffed and not been able to. So it just shows that the dude's not only thinking and understood the levity of that position of that trophy and what it meant, but he's also kicked in and helped us further the recognition process of anglers, and was like, hey man, do you want this to be exclusive to KBF? And I was like, hell no, this needs to belong to the sport. So it's then become the standard for every series, every major series, except Bass. I think they make their own trophies, which, they've been doing this shit for 52 years, so they should. But Hobie does their trophies through.
I'll make their trophies soon enough. Don't you worry about that.
There you go. But anyway, for the kayak fishing series that is run by kayak fishing people, your stuff is the standard. So I want to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end, and I think we've done a good job of talking about the company and the evolution and our relationship and that kind of thing. And but I want to talk about the day that kayak fishing could have changed forever, but didn't. Okay, not going to get into the specifics of it, but there was an event, and we had a board flexing situation that brought into question the validity of the previously existing standard measuring device, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a knee-jerk reaction around the community. We pretty much had that rule in place already. We posted it and everybody was like, oh my God, KBF jumped to their ass and updated the rule like in 15 minutes. I'm like, no, we actually had that rule already. But the point is, even with the rule, it was hard it was difficult. And any tournament director who was kind of been doing it for a while knew that potential was out there for that gap, that thing to be exploited. And, there's been numerous instances where that's happened, not just this one incident. That's just the one that got all the attention. That just got all the attention of the industry. Yeah. But here's the question that I want to ask you, because I firmly believe that if we didn't have the Ketch X, because the Carbonite wasn't available yet, if we didn't have the Ketch X at that time, we would have had a very difficult perception issue in this country with running Ketch photo release tournaments at that time, because there wasn't another viable solution. But talk about that scenario, and where every major tournament series is reaching out to you. And did you take that in stride? Were you ready for it? Was it overwhelming? So just talk about that concept, if you will, for however long how much life you want to give it.
It was, that was a crazy week. I mean, that was, I don't even know how to sum it up. I was one of the first people that saw it, because I work with a critical eye. And I saw the bent board, and I remember sending it to Dave Brook. He's a fellow that I fish with locally who runs tournament series. And I've always known him to be the most fair tournament judge I've ever known. It's all black and white with Dave. And I sent him the picture and I said, man, what's wrong with this? And I get some, expletive ridden response to it. And I was like, okay. So I'm like, maybe I should have noticed this. I'm like, I doubt anyone else notices it. And it's a balancing act when you're a manufacturer. When you point out the deficiencies in another product to point out what's good about your product, you get seen as a hater, right? Oh, well, you're just trying to crap on Hog Trough. No, but unfortunately, that's the product, and that's what I have to compare to. It's not my fault that our product is better in every way, shape, and form than theirs. And so it sounds like I'm kind of crapping on them all the time. But, I had told tournament directors, Chad can attest to it because he got the same speech in 2018, because my whole thing was standardization. You need to have a standard measuring device. It has to be rigid. And there needs to be some accountability. You certainly can't be having the angler draw the lines on it with a Sharpie marker. I'm like, I think that's the worst part of the whole situation. And then when when FlexGate happened, obviously that was a great day for business. We sold a ton of bump boards, and it kind of changed it changed, if you weren't Ketch only at that point, you became so in the next, month or two. The writing was on the wall. And then the really great thing was, I wish it had happened 3 or 4 months later, because we already had the carbonate, which was significantly stiffer than the Hog Trough, and it was in the pipes, but everyone was so knee jerk, we got to change the rules. And, as I've mentioned, I like to kind of put the community above, personal goals. And I just feel like, man, if it had happened just a few months later, everyone could have had the carbonate for $30 instead of having to pay full pop on one of the OG boards. So, I navigated situations with you. We talked to you. I talked to AJ. I was talking to the people that were involved with Bass at the time. I was talking to every club director that I could, because I was on the phone nonstop, 18 hours a day, trying to work through this situation. And it ended up I ended up looking like roses, but everyone should have seen the scrambling that went on here, because every tournament club, every club and tournament series across that was doing CPR across the country was well, we need a board made, and we need this custom color, and we need it to be done like this, and we need it to be done like this. And as most people know, I could do custom to a point, but if you want a new product, I'm probably going to tell you to pound sand unless it's a really great idea. And so we kind of did what we could and we worked through it, but we were in a good position because, you know, you had helped me see the writing on the wall, which was like there needed to be a standardized measurement device. And, you know, the biggest thing we could have done straight out of the gates was partner with KBF and work with KBF and get approved by KBF. That was invaluable. And when that happened, there was no turning back. We had the inventory. We actually never lapsed in inventory over the whole FlexGate thing. And you know, like several tournament series changed their rules, but there weren't any anglers that were left in alerts like I can't fish this event because I can't get a bump board. And you know, that I think that's a little bit of a testament to the, you know, not me but my team, the guys that like I give the absolutely unrealistic expectations to. But you know, that's how we live here. That's you know, we're not trying to be average. We'll leave that to everyone else who wants to be average. We're trying to be exceptional over here.
And one thing that happened during that time was, you know, there was obviously a lot of knee jerking, and, you know, you had already told me about the carbonate. So I knew it was coming. We had shared some prototype exchanges and things like that and design ideas. And I was really heavy on the got to have the numbers on the ridge because that tells us about parallax. And plus a lot of people also don't know that some of the reasoning behind these marks and why they are the way they are is because there's some machine learning stuff that's coming down the road by working with, you know, with Fishing Chaos over here and other entities and AI that's out there to allow the boards to be read. And so Duke bought into that concept early on and has really been beneficial to where it might not have been cost effective to put those marks up there, you know, for where we were at, but have the forward vision to understand that down the road, it was going to be a really smart investment.
And let me interrupt you for 1 second. And I just want to say that if there's anyone that can take advantage of those design features that we've built in, which aren't necessarily public, it's John and the guys over at Fishing Chaos, because they are super technology forward. Let me just tell you that the cheaters out there, if you're watching this, like, you may be able to cheat for like the next like 6 to 12 months, but your reign is over. You will be eradicated like a freaking rodent, because the technology that's coming is it's stupid. It's stupid.
I wasn't going to say that, but I'm glad you did, because you're right. And we've needed it. And so I'll back up a little bit, and then we're going to save some time for questions, because I do think we do need to do some questions. When you reached out to me about the standardization, the biggest lump I had in my throat for our sport was that we didn't have a good measuring board. And I had gone to Yak Attack and Select Designs and every major manufacturer, and the spin up cost of getting off the ground with just the basic machinery and tooling that you would need to ultimately produce something like this was not cost effective. And even to do a tool for a board or do a durometer change, which is what I tried to get Hagens to do forever with the hog trough, wasn't happening. So the blessing that you ended up in that canoe and in this sport and in the ability where you were, based on all the things that happened, to be where you were, when you were, how you were, to be right in the right place at the right time, I consider one of the biggest blessings in the history of the sport. And I consider it a blessing to have met you, because like I said, when you reached out to me, you told me this. You said, I want it to be uncompromisingly American made. And I was into that. I'm not a big, like, I'm going to bash you if you don't make your stuff in America, blah, blah, blah. But I do truly believe that make it in America when you can. I love it when people crap on other people from a cell phone that was made in, you know, Sri Lanka, and then say, I don't buy anything but American made, America. And then they type it on a Chinese computer or a Sri Lankan phone or something. And it's like, come on, man. And so I try to be as American made as I possibly can, where I can, when I can, how I can. And so I appreciated that. But what I also knew was we need a standard to the degree of laser precision for where this sport is going to go. And for the point of getting within a quarter of an inch, people don't realize that quarter inch is not the big deal. It's with that quarter inch is off by a 16th, and that person gets granted that quarter of an inch. If it gets granted that quarter of an inch, then that quarter of an inch means the difference in some places between 15, 20 places. So
Hold
it's
on.
not.
Let me interrupt again. manufacturing tolerances, if you're plus minus 1/6, that's an eighth between the smallest and the largest. And let me tell you, I won't name any names, but a lot of the manufacturers that are in the market present day do not even hold 1/16. That's 0.0625 of an inch. In my world, that's a mile. I could drive a truck through it.
Yeah. But the point I was making is our standard is 1/4 of an inch. And by not being within a plus or minus of a 16th, if that 16th is off the wrong way and back to the whole drawn line, I hated the drawn line thing from the beginning, but it was because the anglers wanted to see it in their version of the photo. And I was always like, I don't need to see those black lines. When we pull the photo up, we can slide the contrast slider. The lines come up, and if you leave them as razor thin as they need to be, we can tell if it's a line cutter or not. When you black it out with a big blob Sharpie, or if you put the Sharpie on one side or the other, it just complicates judging. But what I wanted to say was I knew there needed to be a standard. You were a guy coming to the table saying, I've got the expertise, the manufacturing capability, and everything we need, and I'm committed to doing this, and we'll make as many iterations as we need to get to the point where, and I was telling you back then, you know, like, was it 5 years ago, 4 years ago? Dude, it needs to be that we're thinking forward, and we're always 3-4 steps ahead of what the industry even understands. And you committed to doing that. So I remember the day you called me and said, dude, I don't feel right about not doing something for KBF. Like I'm selling these boards. You're the reason, blah, blah, blah. Like, let's create a deal where we, you know, where Ketch gives KBF like, you know, I forget what it was, $12 a board or something, or $10 a board, or I forget exactly what the deal was. And I remember you said that, and I didn't want to like seem unappreciative of the offer. And I don't even remember exactly what I said, but I was basically like, no, dude, keep that in making this thing cost effective, pass that back to the angler, and just keep making something this community needs, and that's my repayment.
That was what sold me on Chad Hoover as a person. Like, you know, I knew you were an influencer previous to that, but that's what sold me on Chad Hoover, the human being, was that, you know, I here, you know, we're a small company, and I don't know if people know the way the economics of the way, you know, marketing deals work with small companies, but working with a company my size, as any of my pro staff can attest to you, is not a monetarily beneficial, you know, program. But when someone like you know, I've said it to a lot of people, you know, like outside of the walls that I'm in right here, and the people that have been in here and done this with me, like that have been in the trenches like since day one, there's no one that's done more for this business than you. And that's, and then, you know, again, it was just a gesture to be like, listen, brother, I know what you did for me. And I just want to pay that forward, because I wouldn't be sitting here with a business today in this market if it wasn't for Chad Hoover. 100%. Like, you can tell me I got a great idea, it would have been successful regardless, but I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for you. And so it was just all about like a gesture of like, you know, listen, man, I get that. And I can't do that much, but I can do this much. And like, it would have meant money in your pocket, which, as a tournament director, come on, a lot of you guys have been tournament directors out there. You know what it's like. Like, if someone wants to throw like 10, 12, 15 grand your way, are you going to say no? No. He was the guy that said no. Right down there. Right there. He said no, not you guys, because you'd all taken it. And then that's nothing against you. That's nothing against the rest of the market. I was just so taken aback by the fact that it was like, you know, listen, what if we don't do that? What if we just could, like, we give like a 10 or 15% discount to the KBF members? Like, I just want to make sure it gets back down to my members, because really it's all about like driving and growing the sport and building the membership, and like showing these guys, you know, the benefits of being part of the community. And like, I mean, I was blown away by that. I don't cry. I think I cried on stage at the 2018 national championship, or the 2019 national championship, when you brought me up. I felt like a little turd, but, you know, but it is what it is. And I mean, I was just taken aback by that, because like you know, I heard the same stories that everyone else heard, like, you know, like Chad Hoover, man, like, I don't know about that guy, blah, 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 blah. And I'll tell you what, I know about that guy. He's a fucking awesome dude. I trust him with fucking anything. Sorry. That was an F-bomb.
Yeah, we might have to bleep that. But
hour and 4 minutes before the F-bomb, folks. So
look, Matt,
betting on it, you're under the hour and 5 minute deadline on the over-under.
I wasn't saying that for you to turn it back on me, and I appreciate it, and I'm blushing over here. But what I thought at the time was, listen, you've already done enough for the sport because you've created a new standard, and that's what we needed. And I also know that you can cripple a company when you attach some type of low level at the time when it seems like nothing royalty or deal to a growing brand and a growing business. Mm-hmm. And I just knew that there needed to be investment back in the product, back into the design, and back into getting that water jet and those kind of things so that we could keep moving forward. So yeah, I appreciate that, man. But look, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you've done. I know that just like any other entrepreneur, you've been in the times where you've pulled your hair out and sit there and thought, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And every time for me, it's the testimonial from folks that say, kayak fishing changed my life. Fishing changed my life. This community changed my life. And so that's my payback. You know, a lot of people don't realize this. I've literally still to this day never made a nickel off of KBF. I've had some great experiences.
I can attest to that.
It's helped me pay people. It's helped me employ people. When people ask me what am I the proudest of in this sport, it's not my personal accomplishments. It's my ability to have, you know, giving people a future, helped brands like yours, you know, get off the ground and flourish and be able to innovate down the road. And so that's my payment, right? Because
that's what it's all about. And we've managed to, you know, with the same kind of thinking, we managed to put 4 guys in our plant through college education. No $10,000 forgiveness. I'm looking at you guys in California. We put them through college, full boat. And that's what it's all about, you know, help your fellow human being, and like not just when it has something to do with like you benefiting, you know, like you reap what you sow. And if you're one of these negative people, there's a lot of them in the industry, and if you're one of these negative people, like you're gonna get you.
Yeah. And again, man, I just wanted to say, like, for me, the benefit of being where I am is that I can give back. I've been blessed, you know, my television show and my sponsorships personally helped me finance getting KBF off the ground, and I've invested in it. I'm not stupid. I do have a plan to make money at some point. Very few people are still hanging on it 12 years in something not making money. And now I'm going to go through a divorce, and that's probably going to, you know, you guys know it. That is not great. Christy is by far the most reasonable person I've ever met. So it's going to be way less painful than it would be for most people. And she's actually helped KBF flourish. So there's obviously got to be respect paid for that. And I'm not a dummy, you know. But let's do this, Duke. Let's take a couple of minutes. We're already at an hour and 7 minutes, but
sure.
Let's take a couple minutes and answer some questions if there are any there. If you folks that are watching have some questions for Duke, man, post them.
Yeah, I mean we've got a few, but one of the questions was, are the cradles available anymore? Are they able to get them? Like somebody had the original Ketch X board, and they'd love to have a cradle for.
We do have a back stock of cradles. We can sell replacement cradles. When we still actually have some inventory of the original board, the original powder coated boards, but those are out of production. They may get brought back for nostalgia reasons, like way down the road, but like the cost to produce has gotten pretty nasty with us. The COVID pandemic, like you can thank the COVID pandemic for killing that one. It got to be less and less profitable, and it's not going to come back. But we will always be able to service the product, replacement parts, no problem. They just got to reach out to us.
Gotcha. Yeah. The other thing is this was a good one. I appreciate the fact that Ketch could have charged whatever they wanted, but they kept it reasonable for the kayak community. So it's a huge thank you to that attestament right there. And then fact there definitely changed my life. I don't know who that Facebook user is, so thank you for adding to the comments. And they are saying, Duke, design a custom fish finder mount for more stable than plastic mounts.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You see that smug grin in the bottom screen? we might just be doing that on a podcast sometime soon. But we're working on some of that platform specific stuff. We've kind of like Chad and I have kind of isolated some brands that we think are really cool to work with and that could use a little, not use a little help because they're doing great as they are, but like as far as like applying the technology to a kayak platform, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a couple guys like me and Chad that'd be more adept at doing that. And so we do have a little fish finder mount thing coming up not too long.
Yeah, we just had an R&D meeting up in Wisconsin where Duke almost assaulted a charter captain who insulted kayak fishermen as speed bumps. But we will have to save that for another show and end on that, man. So listen, guys, if you are looking for an American-made company, a company that's committed to being American-made, a company that is uncompromisingly American-made, a company that, in my opinion, has contributed to the standardization of kayak fishing as good, if not better, than anybody else has. And it's really been my goal all along with KBF is to just push for standardization. And when you don't have the same measuring device, it's really hard to have standardization. So my hat's off to Duke and the team over there. I got to meet his dad when I was up in Illinois for the Catch 22 Challenge. Got to meet some of the team. I got to see the space where it all happens. And, a lot of people see me wearing my Nashville shirt here and know that that's a big shout out to my new home here in Huntsville in Rocket City. But I also graduated from Embry-Riddle. I'm an aeronautical engineer background. That's what I came from. So I geek out over manufacturing and that kind of stuff. And so to go there and to see the level of commitment to precision manufacturing was unreal. Because again, aviation might be the most anal profession when it comes to manufacturing that there is out there. And these dudes are manufacturing at the level of aviation anal. I can tell you right now. And also, you can tell something about a company when you walk around. All the people working there are wearing Ketch shirts, and they've got Ketch stickers on their car out in the parking lot, and they've got their kayak loaded, and they've got the Ketch hat on, and they've got the Ketch board, and they, you know what I mean? They're just, their kayaks are stuck in the little R&D room, and they're in there tweaking and building, and it just was a real cool testament to what you've built there, sir, and what your dad is sidebarred, or however that whole dynamic works out. I still haven't exactly figured it out. If
I haven't figured it out either. So when you figure it out, just send me an email, man.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to learning more about it. I'm looking forward to, furthering our friendship, our professional relationship, and, waiting to see what's next from Ketch in the kayak fishing community and the greater outdoor space in general. So
I'm looking forward to testing you because, like, you guys don't know this, but in the green room before the podcast started, Chad compared himself to a rocket scientist.
That is not what I said.
It was pretty close. It was pretty close.
What I said
I'm not ad-libbing.
What I said is when somebody makes the statement, "We're not a freaking rocket scientist," I'm like, well, technically, So anyway.
I like to break balls,
Dude, yeah, tell everybody real quick how they can get a hold of you and how they can, because right now on the website there's nothing about trophies. So how can they reach out to you about getting trophies done, and also about maybe getting some bump boards for their trail series?
Yeah, well, I'm going to apologize about the horrible website because it's actually in the process of being rebuilt, and it's been a little bit of a tedious process. But everyone can find us at www.ketchproducts.com. That's Ketch spelled with a K-E and products with an S. And you can find us on all the socials at some derivative of that. I think it's Ketch USA on Instagram, Ketch Products on Facebook. Chad's way better at this stuff than me.
I'll link them all up in the description box if you guys are watching this on YouTube. And if you guys could do us a favor, and post up links to all of the Ketch social platforms and stuff like this on these live streams, we will appreciate that greatly. And, with that, man, Randy, take us out of here, bro. Duke, thank you again, as always.
Thank you guys, man. I appreciate it.
Looking forward to the next adventure in designing products.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, have a great week. We look forward to seeing you guys next week when we've got an awesome show also to talk about some new and upcoming things going down.
And the big...
Hey guys, I'm Chad Hoover with Kayak Bass Fishing. If you're looking to get in on the exciting sport of kayak fishing yourself, check out kayakbassfishing.com. Yeah! Boom! Oh, yes. What a freaking toad. So whether you want to find out more about competitive kayak fishing and kayak fishing tournaments or just looking to learn more to make yourself a better angler, head over to kayakbassfishing.com and join today.